Many of you know that it was my father's special calling to help the poor in West Virginia. And although he was a Presbyterian minister and not a Catholic priest, he took what amounted to a vow of poverty in order to do that. My mother's calling was different. As a self-appointed missionary, she was determined to share the good news with as many people as she could while we were in West Virginia, but also determined as a mother that her boys would go to church and study hard and stay away from junk food. So as a result of my father's poverty and my mother's convictions, we didn't have much ice cream and candy when I was growing up. And we certainly didn't have any soft drinks, except on the one vacation we took each year, whether we had any money or not. My father would gas up the family station wagon, put us all inside, and then start driving. He would go as far as he could before stopping for gas. My mother would be sitting there in the passenger seat, spreading peanut butter on thick slabs of whole wheat bread and throwing them over into the back just as fast as she could. My brothers and I would eat, we would read books, we would count cows, we would talk, we would sing, and we would look forward to that first stop along the highway. Because when it came, finally, my father would do something he didn't do at any other time of the year. He would pull up to the gas pump, get out of the car, and then, while my mother was looking the other way, he would dig down deep into his pocket and pull out a handful of quarters and give each one of his boys a quarter so that we could buy a soft drink. We would tiptoe across the hot pavement in our bare feet and go to the big drink machine standing over there at the edge of the pavement. In those days, the drink machines had a big, long, narrow door down the right-hand side with a window in it so that you could look through the window at the bottle caps of the different kinds of soda. We would do that, and we would spend a good bit of time making our big decision. You only get one soft drink a year. You don't want to be in a hurry. So there were the standards there, of course, Coke and Sprite and others, but depending on where we were, sometimes other exotic soft drinks would show up in the window. Yoo-hoo, chocolate soda, Sundrop, Grape-ette, cheer wine. Well, when you finally made your choice, you'd drop a quarter in the slot. You would open that door just like a refrigerator door, reach in, grab the bottle by its neck, and if everything worked in the way it was supposed to, the machine would release the bottle and you could pull it out with a loud, satisfying chunk, chunk, and then pop the top off right there. I would watch while the vapor from the carbonation rose inside the frosty neck of that bottle and wafted down over the edges. I would hold it up to my nose, feel the tickle of the bubbles, and take that first sip. It was so cold, so delicious, so satisfying, I can hardly describe it. My favorite in those days was orange soda. I liked the reliable orange flavor of knee-high, the slightly sweeter taste of Fanta, or the cool, tingling surge of Orange Crush. Not that I was a connoisseur. I mean, when you sample only one bottle a year, it's hard to develop the discriminating taste buds necessary for such a thing, but I still like to think I knew my orange soda. I savored every sip. And when I daydreamed in those days, I dreamed about someday having a big house with a big kitchen and a sink with 3 knobs, one for hot water, one for cold water, and one for orange soda. Can you imagine filling a glass with ice cubes, holding it under the faucet, turning the knob, and watching as the glass filled up with knee-high or Fanta or Orange Crush? I could imagine it. I did imagine it often. And for me, it wasn't just the idea of having orange soda whenever I wanted it. It was the idea of having lots of orange soda, buckets full of it, bathtubs full. Having lived so long with scarcity, I dreamed of abundance. Which means that this story from the 2nd chapter of John isn't as foreign to me as it might be to some people. This idea that Jesus can turn water into wine was just the kind of miracle I had been wishing for most of my life, dreaming that one day someone would show up at my house with that kind of power. John says that Jesus was at a wedding in Cana, a little town in Galilee, which was probably just as small and just as poor as some of the towns I lived in when I was growing up in West Virginia. Because I was there back then, I can almost picture what it was like in Cana. That bride and groom standing outside a yellow and white mobile home on a rainy day. Her trying hard not to get mud on her white shoes, lifting up the hem of her wedding dress. And him standing beside her, holding the umbrella over both of them with a cigarette dangling from the corner of his mouth and a crooked grin on his face as he tries to hike up her skirt a little higher. They've just come from the reception, which was held down at the firehouse because they don't allow the consumption of alcoholic beverages at the fellowship hall of the local Baptist church. So the boys down at the firehouse just backed the truck out into the driveway and swept off the concrete floor. They set up some folding chairs and tables, and then they all chipped in and went out and bought a case of Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill wine because you only get married once. You ought to make it special. But then Jesus showed up with some of those disciples he was always walking around with, and it wasn't long before the wine was gone.